Soutar, who will speak on innovations and emerging trends in digital media, including animation and motion graphics. Among David's accolades is that he is an executive member of the /Roots Foundation, which is a civic technology nonprofit that works with the government and civil sector to address problems in the Caribbean region. David is also an academic whose research interests include design thinking, media research, digital ethnography, interactive media, algorithmic animation, open source manufacturing, and civic technology. A mouthful. He's a bright guy. David will be followed by Jamar Thelwell, a graduate of the Art Institute of Atlanta and holder of a master's in creative technology from Middlesex University in the United Kingdom. Jamar will explore, among other things, new possibilities for human interaction and the development of immersive environments. And our final speaker this morning will be Chevonese Cheevers-White. Chevonese has studied video production, animation, and graphic design, and she currently lectures in graphic design and is managing and creative director of Night Vision Media Limited, a graphic design company. Chevonese will speak on design and electronic publishing, and she'll also explore the nexus between platform convergence, the future of print, prosumer power, and media regulation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our next speaker, David Soutar.
Morning, everyone. So I'd like to speak to you a little bit today about empathy and failure as it relates to design research. We've heard from Rashawn and Kenya about the exciting future of digital content and digital media. I'd like to now delve a little bit into how that media is created. What kind of design procedures and research techniques are used in the creation of animation, apps, TV shows, and so on and so forth. So a little bit of a background on myself. I currently lecture at Caramac, where I supervise undergraduate students in media research and production. I supervise the digital media production program as well as the emerging animation program that is coming on board. In addition to that, I'm a co-founder at /Roots, where we participate in working with the government using technology to solve some of the problems endemic to our region. We use ethnographic research and human-centered design to do this. I also share an office with Rashawn and Kenya, where a lot of my techniques are slowly rubbing off on them. And I'm not saying that I use music in my software development, but it is a symbiotic relationship. /Roots recently completed a 6-month project working with the Minister of Agriculture, trying to tackle the issue of predial larceny. And out of this 6-month research project, we were able to create 2 pieces of software. One is the Harvest API, which utilizes existing information in the government on agricultural data, and we have now created a layer for hackers and software developers to create their own applications using the government's data. One of those applications is CLIP. It's an SMS application using content and data that the government already has to help police officers in the field determining if the goods in the back of the market truck they've just pulled over are legal or stolen. So I want to talk a little bit about our research process. And this is something that I've been working with Kenya and Rashawn over the last few months, as well as at /Roots, and leading my students at Caramac in the creation of applications to tell you where your closest police station is or fire station is, figuring out what the closest hospital to you is, the creation of digital magazines, video games about ninja bunnies battling evil cupcakes and zombie carrots. It's a project that it's a process of research that you can use with any form of digital media product. So one of the questions that I ask incoming research assistants, if there was any part of government, any governmental agency that you could redesign, which one would it be? All? I would just think of the experience of interacting with that government entity. Which one would it be? And funny enough, everyone does say the tax office or the registrar general. Skip ahead a little bit. When you think about it, you show up at the tax office at 7:30 in the morning to join the line before it opens. You then spend a great deal of time inside this line. You go all the way to the front of the line, and you realize that there's a piece of paper that's missing. Right? Or that you've joined the wrong line. Right? And what I'd like to kind of pull this all together, empathy is the first part of our research process. Technology is the easy part. If you want your fridge to tell you how drunk you are, the technology exists. But figuring out how to create an emotive and memorable user experience with that piece of technology, that's the hard part. Understanding exactly what your user wants and needs, that's not a trivial matter. So here's an outline of how our process evolves. We start with empathy first. Interviews and a synthesis process where we collect information in the field and we distill that into actionable ideas. We then now enter into the failure section where we design and test. And this is the part that my students start to shift in their seats, where I say, I want you to fail. Failure is a valuable part of the design process and the research process. You can learn more about your user and your possible solutions with a design prototype that fails than weeks and weeks and weeks of testing by yourself. Put the thing in your user's hand. So, interviews. This is a picture of two of our research assistants, Station and Rory, where we got them to go out into the field visiting farmers for about 2 months. They came back to their office afterwards covered in cowitch and mud and tired each night. But they were able to experience firsthand the problems that farmers go through. This is not a spreadsheet with facts and figures. It's not some statistical analysis. It's not where you invite people into a sterile office. This is you waking up 4 o'clock in the morning to go to a farm to see firsthand the problems these farmers experience on a daily basis. You have to be able to ask the hard questions, the questions that make them feel uncomfortable. Questions like, what do you do with a thief that you found on your farm? To be able to get an honest answer out of them, you have to have some sort of emotional connection with them. If you're going to be asking people how they use technology, how they use their mobile phone, you have to give them an environment where they can really be honest with you so you can get a definite idea of what they do with technology and what they do in their daily lives. Which brings me to the last point, homegrown solutions. Just because you are entering into this problem to try and find a solution doesn't mean that they haven't figured out a solution already. You want to look at how they use technology, they use the resources at hand to solve their own problems, and this will give you insights in how to attack the problems yourself. Synthesis. So, and we get a lot of flack and weird looks from this in our office. We cover our walls in thousands of Post-it notes. And this is really our exploration of the problem space, the space in which the problem exists. So every single observation or tidbit that we got from farmers in the field or people that we interviewed became yellow Post-it notes. And we had hundreds of them. And what you're looking for is the same Post-it note appearing over and over again. And this is now a pattern. We then put a pink Post-it note up. And then if we see the same pattern, we start to say, well, that's an insight. That's something we never saw before. And so that now becomes a green Post-it note or a blue Post-it note. And this is what we now use to fuel our prototyping process. And so I've invited Rashawn and Kenya to follow along in my madness in filling up their windows in yellow Post-it notes. It's a battle that we're slowly winning. But after this process where you have distilled now and you have a firm understanding of the problem space, you need to start to filter through all this information. And what starts to develop is an ecosystem map. You start to understand all the people who touch this problem. Imagine an elephant in a dark room with people surrounding the elephant, touching the elephant from multiple points. No one knows it's an elephant. Everyone thinks that they understand the problem perfectly, and they have this texture and this feeling, but until everyone starts talking to each other, you don't know how large the problem is. The next is figuring out your user's journey, how they use technology on a daily basis, whether it is through their mobile phone, or whether it is through text messaging. Figure out how they are solving their own problems. We had one farmer who says, when we asked him, how do you figure out what to plant? He says, I send my wife to the market and they spy on other vendors and farmers and they tell me, what's selling or what's being very profitable in the market, and then 2 months from now I plant that. Or we ask them, how is it that you prevent people from stealing, crops on your farms? Well, what I do is that, I rent out, spaces around my farm to other farmers in my community for free. So when the thieves come, they rob from those people first, and they don't come to my farm. And so what starts to develop is a series of personas, profiles on categories of users. So you say, I have X person between the ages of 25 and 35. They use their cell phone very modestly. And then I have someone between 45 and 55 who, has someone else use their cell phone for them. And so this now starts to develop in your mind, who am I creating this piece of software or content for? And you get to know them like you know yourselves. You understand their motivations and their feelings. And so this gives you an idea of the ecosystem map surrounding Previsualization. It's all, the text is all a bit small on purpose, so you realize how big it is. So if you're talking about farmers, you have to talk about registered and non-registered farmers. If you're talking about thieves, because they are part of the ecosystem, you have to talk about the police. And if you start talking about the vendors, you have to talk about the markets. You then have to talk about abattoirs, butchers. Then you have to talk about hotels and supermarkets, and it goes on and on and on and on. Failure. The trick with failure is fail fast and fail cheaply. You want to fail in your process, and you want to fail early in your process so that this can be part of your development strategy. So the first part is design and testing. And you are exploring now the solution space, the space that your solution now exists. And you have multiple solutions to the one problem that you have chosen. First step now is to create a low-fidelity prototype. This means do not spend 2 months and $500,000 with a team of programmers creating your application. Don't sit down with teams and teams of illustrators and animators creating your animation or the pilot for your first TV show. No. Instead, go down to your bookstore, get a pad of Post-it notes or pieces of paper and markers, and draw your application on a piece of paper. So right here, what you're seeing is someone drawing how their piece of software would work on a mobile phone. They then hand that pad of paper to someone. They hold it in their hand and go, well, imagine this was a phone or an application. Would this be something you'd buy? Instead of spending $500,000 in 2 months, you've spent 15 minutes and $10. And you've gotten valuable feedback that you can then use in the process of creating your app or creating your TV show and so on. What you're trying to create then afterwards is what's called an MVP, a minimum viable product. This is the least amount of effort and money for the most amount of impact. And you ship with this. And this is frustrating for me as a designer. I'm a perfectionist. I want my product to be perfect. But my investors want me to make money. So you want to get your product on the market as soon as you can before anyone else does. And you want to start learning from your users as quickly as possible. And this is not relegated solely to the field of software design. Animators and filmmakers use this process to save millions and millions of dollars. In the case of animation, you animate your storyboard to create what's called an animatic. Instead of spending years, months, working on a multi-million-dollar product, only to test it in a theater and realize that the 5 to 7-year-olds that you've made this movie for don't like your lead character, animate your storyboard and get a small cohort of people inside of a room and ask, do they like this character? In the case of filmmaking, what's called previsualization is used. And here are two examples. One from the last Terminator movie and one from an Indiana Jones movie, where they get a team of animators to use crude 3D models to act out the entire movie. So the entire movie is made digitally before a single cameraman holds a camera. So they get the writer, the editor, the composer, all the actors, the directors, to sit down with a team of animators, and they create a mock run of the movie. This allows them to save millions of dollars on equipment rental fees. They don't have to do reshoots. They can have the arguments between the two cameramen and the producer inside a closed room and not on set. And you don't waste any money and time. Conversely to this, you have the idea of a pilot. You shoot one episode of your TV series to test it. This means you're doing it for real. You're spending an actual budget, you're getting actual actors, and you're having them act out this story that you have. And then you test it. What if it fails? You've spent now millions of dollars. And you're now seeing more and more TV shows and animations moving away from this model and going straight to series. This is also not uncommon now in filmmaking. Tyler Perry, for instance, who uses plays as a way of testing his movies first. So, after you've gone through design and testing, we're now left to go back to the beginning. Rinse and repeat. Learn from your failures very quickly and put this information back into your process. Question the assumptions that you made at the beginning. And if you do this quick enough, you can iterate many times, perfecting your product, regardless of what type of digital media it is, until you have something that is viable. And thank you. To learn more, you can visit karamak.com to see the courses that we're offering and /roots.org to see the research that we're doing. Thank you very much.
Hello, good morning. I don't know how to start. I'm kind of nerve-wracking right now because I'm kind of nervous. And it's kind of showing right now, but I'm speaking on innovation and emerging technology in